The metal teeth of my harvester stopped inches from her Porsche's cherry red rear bumper. The only thing between it and 2 tons of angry steel was a pair of fuzzy dice dangling from the mirror. I could hear my cows bellowing from the barn behind it, hungry and impatient. And I could hear Karen's voice in my head, all smug from earlier that morning when she blocked the barn door with her keys in hand, saying, "It's just for a few hours, babe. I need the aesthetic for my yoga retreat." My hands tightened around the steering wheel as the engine roared to life. And I realized I was about to do something unforgettable, maybe even unforgivable, depending on which side of the fence you stood on. All I could think was, not today, Karen, not during feed time, not. 12 hours earlier, I had been sipping lukewarm coffee on the porch, watching the sun creep over the cornfields when Roy rolled up in his dented pickup to drop off a new water tank for the goat. We chatted about the heat wave, the price of diesel, and how Martha's prize hen was now brooding on a pile of golf balls. Small town stuff, peaceful, predictable. That was until Karen showed up at the farmer's market like a storm cloud in Lululemon. She was newish to town, one of those HOA royalty types who treated rural life like a weekend Instagram filter. Her husband apparently made money from something involving tech and teeth. I never did get a straight answer. What mattered was that she'd been poking her nose into farm business lately, trying to turn our town into her version of a wellness utopia. This morning she lost it over a missing jar of Manuka honey from her pre-reserved order and accused me of hoarding it for my livestock. I laughed because the goats do like sweet things, but that didn't help. She threw a tantrum, a real foot-stomping, high-pitched spectacle in front of half the town, then stormed off yelling that I'd regret embarrassing her in public. I didn't think much of it until I came back to my farm and saw her Porsche backed up to my barn door so tight it was kissing the lock. No note, no explanation, just Karen's signature move. Entitlement parked on 4 wheels with a hint of citrusy air freshener. I called her. No answer. I texted nothing. I even walked down to the yoga camp she was hosting a few fields over, but got intercepted by one of her personal assistants, who looked like he'd been trained in polite hostility. I paced, I fumed, and then I heard the cows. It was near noon by then, and the inside of the barn was cooking. I had fans installed, sure, but without the doors open to circulate air, the temperature climbed fast. That's when it stopped being annoying and started being dangerous. Livestock doesn't care about petty vendettas. They just need care. I called the sheriff thinking maybe they could tow it. But since it wasn't technically a public road, they couldn't touch it without a court order. They said I had days, maybe hours. I called Roy. He said what I already knew. "You're gonna have to move that thing yourself." I could hear the smirk in his voice. "You still got the big green beast gassed up." The big green beast, my harvester, my pride and joy, the one I only pulled out during peak season or when things got biblical. It had blades the size of surfboards and an engine that could wake the dead. And it just so happened to be parked 30 feet away, purring with fuel and ready for glory. I didn't go rogue immediately. I tried common sense. I taped a polite warning note to the car. I gave it another hour. I even went to town hoping she'd come to her senses. But when I got back and saw her lounging under a canopy, laughing with a circle of crystal earring influencers, I made my choice. I called Martha first. She used to be a lawyer before she traded it all in for goat cheese and solitude. "You're covered," she said after a quick read-through of local agricultural laws. "Emergency livestock access on private land with equipment necessary for animal welfare. Take pictures. Film everything. Wear a nice hat." I liked that last part, so I rallied the town. Or at least Roy, Martha, and the intern who milks cows on weekends. They brought phones, lawn chairs, and sweet tea. I climbed into the harvester, adjusted the seat, turned the ignition, and rolled forward. Real slow, real steady. It was like preparing for a mechanical ballet with a metal-crunching finale. The first touch was subtle, a slight nudge. The Porsche creaked like an aluminum can under a boot. The second was more assertive. The hood began to crumple. The mirror snapped off. I kept filming. Everyone was silent except Roy, who muttered, "Holy moly," and Martha, who whispered, "This is better than cable." By the time the front end was mashed into modern art, I had enough space to open the barn doors wide, and the rush of fresh air into that heat box made the cows practically cheer. They didn't care about lawsuits or yoga or porches. They just wanted to breathe, eat, and moo. I parked the harvester, stepped out, and looked at what I had done. It was both horrifying and magnificent and entirely preventable. But Karen had chosen drama over decency. I was just the guy who answered. Later, I'd find out the video had already hit social media thanks to the intern. The views were climbing, the hashtags were brutal, and the memes were merciless. Porsche Pancake trended for 5 hours straight. Karen wouldn't know until morning what had happened, and I had no idea yet just how far she'd go to get revenge. But in that moment, with the barn open and the cows safe, I didn't feel petty. I felt practical. And maybe just a little vindicated, because when someone parks a sports car between you and 20 lives depending on you, it's not just about convenience anymore. It's about doing what needs to be done, even if that means driving a harvester through a poor show while the whole town watches. And this was only the beginning. The sun had barely risen when Karen returned to the scene of the crime, or at least what she considered to be one. Her Porsche, or what was left of it, sat like a crumpled soda can in front of the barn. The paint chipped and curled like burnt bacon. The windshield cracked like spiderwebs after a storm. I was already up feeding the goats when I heard the screech. Her designer flip-flops slapped against the dirt as she stormed toward the wreckage, her voice pitching louder with every step. She shrieked a wordless wail, a sound so intense it sent the ducks scrambling into the pond like there was a hawk in the sky. I stayed quiet. I knew what was coming. The pointing, the threats, the accusations of male aggression and rural barbarism. And right on cue, she turned phone already out, camera facing her, tears perfectly timed. "This man destroyed my vehicle. Look what he did. He's dangerous. Someone tag my lawyer." The way she paced in front of the car, flinging her arm toward it like she was hosting an infomercial for pity, would have been funny if it wasn't so obnoxious. I leaned against the fence post, sipping coffee, letting her monologue for her audience. Eventually, she noticed me. Or maybe she just needed a villain for her video. She stormed over, still recording, eyes blazing with a fury only an influencer on the verge of going viral can summon. "You're going to jail," she snapped. "Do you know how expensive that car was? I'll see you in court." I finished my coffee and motioned toward the laminated paper stuck to the barn door. It was the law. Emergency livestock access. Cited, highlighted, sealed in plastic. Her lips moved as she scanned it, but I could tell none of it registered. The words bounced off her like rain on a duck's back. "That's not real law," she spat. "My husband's lawyer is going to eat you alive." I said nothing. I just walked back toward the barn as she shouted after me. Every insult rolled off. This wasn't about the Porsche anymore. It was about the principle. The cows had needed me. I'd acted. She'd blocked life-saving access for vanity, and the law was clear. But Karen didn't want logic. She wanted a stage. By mid-morning, the first of the news crews had shown up. Apparently, someone had sent the video of the incident to a local station, which then passed it along to a national affiliate. When I saw a van pull up with a satellite dish and a lady in heels trying to step over cow pies, I knew it had escalated. The reporter was professional, surprisingly polite. She asked for a comment. I kept it short. "I opened the barn to keep animals alive. I filmed it because I knew she'd sue. The law's on my side." Then I went back to work. Karen, on the other hand, gave 3 separate interviews, each one more dramatic than the last. She clutched her yoga mat like a shield, wore a shirt that read "spiritual, not stupid," and claimed PTSD from the sound of heavy machinery. She said she feared for her life, that the harvester had emotional energy that triggered her trauma. Meanwhile, the internet had already dubbed her Porsche Pancake and layered auto-tuned remixes of her scream over dance beats. The town hadn't seen this much excitement since the mayor's llama escaped during Founders Day. Martha and Roy stopped by around noon. Martha brought lemon bars and legal printouts. She had found 2 more clauses supporting my actions, including one that covered heat-related emergencies for livestock. Karen didn't stand a chance in court, but she was already trying the case in the court of public opinion. Roy chuckled as he scrolled through the latest memes. One showed the harvester wearing sunglasses with the caption, "Don't block what you can't out-harvest." Another had Karen photoshopped into a NASCAR pit stop getting crushed by various farm equipment. It wasn't kind, but it was karma with a soundtrack. That afternoon, the sheriff showed up not to arrest me, thankfully, but to document everything. He had a stack of papers from Karen's lawyer demanding a civil investigation. He looked tired. I gave him the footage, the time-stamped feed logs, the vet statement about animal risk, and the weather report showing heat indexes high enough to cook an egg on a shovel. He nodded and set off. "Off the record, between you and me, I'd have done the same thing." Karen, meanwhile, hadn't let up. She was now claiming that I had used the harvester as a weapon. She called it vehicular intimidation and said she was afraid to leave her luxury estate. Then she made the mistake of trying to use the HOA to push back harder. That's when things really got interesting. See, Karen didn't just live under any HOA. She practically ran it, or thought she did. The estate was filled with semi-retired executives who liked peace and golf, not drama and court battles. She'd been lording over them for months, pushing for organic-only landscaping and banning American flags because they didn't match the color palette. Now those same board members were being dragged into the media spotlight because of her antics. One HOA officer called me privately and said, "Just so you know, we're not backing her. She's acting alone, but I could tell they were nervous. If she kept pushing, this wasn't just going to be a feud, it would turn into a PR disaster, especially when it turned out she'd submitted her HOA complaint using forged signatures from neighbors who had never even attended the meeting." A clerk at the county building flagged it after seeing the video and recognizing the same pen stroke used for 5 different names. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the barn and the still parked wreckage of what used to be a Porsche, I felt a strange peace settle over me. Not because it was over. It wasn't. But because something had shifted. Karen had assumed the rules didn't apply to her, that she could weaponize influence, luxury, and a good crying face. But she underestimated something more powerful than any engine. A community that sticks together, a town that remembers, and a farmer who knew how to push back without ever saying a word. That night I saw one final post on social media that made me laugh out loud. It was Karen herself this time, clearly trying to regain control of the narrative. She sat on a yoga mat backlit by candles, surrounded by incense, speaking in a soft but strained voice. "I've chosen to forgive the man who ruined my car. He clearly lives a hard life. I wish him healing and perspective." She signed off with namaste but forgot to mute the mic before whispering, "I hope his cows all get pink eye." The comments tore her apart. I shut my phone off and looked out at the barn. My animals were fed, the doors were clear, the harvester was parked and clean, and Karen's Porsche was still exactly where it needed to be. A very public reminder of what happens when you park arrogance in front of responsibility. And tomorrow wasn't promised to anyone, especially not to Porsches parked in the path of justice.